about doing this seminar. We said lunch and learn, hopefully like that, not a seminar. It was really hard because we didn't know what type of audience we would have in QuickBooks. Some people have no knowledge and some people do. So I'm hoping, I know a few of you in here are experienced in QuickBooks, and so we've tried to throw in a few things that maybe you'll get something out of it. But really, when we talked with Teresa, what we wanted to do is tailor our discussion today around if you've never used it. Like, don't be fearful of it. We were just talking ahead of this, before this, that it can be used for, you don't have to be in a business or part of your job. You can use QuickBooks. And if anything, maybe you'll take this and somebody will be talking about it and you'll say, it's really user-friendly, and you'll agree with us, because we always say that it's user-friendly, it's forgiving, and there's multiple ways to do things and undo things. But then always keep in mind that you have a resource like our firm in Minocqua, Peterson Metzwith. We have a staff of about 10 people, and we provide not only QuickBooks assistance, we provide payroll services, tax services, consulting services. We work with not-for-profits, trusts and estates, so we kind of have a wide array of services that we provide. My expertise is actually in the tax. I have a master's in tax. But I've been in the Northwoods, won't bore you with my details, but I've been in the Northwoods for about 7 years. So as I was explaining before this too, I have only been using QuickBooks for about 7 years, but we have people in our office that are very seasoned in QuickBooks. We have someone that has taught QuickBooks for about 17 years, and we're just resourceful amongst us, and we learn from our clients as well. I actually just had a couple weeks ago, a client of mine was doing something a certain way that I wasn't familiar with, and it was a different way, but it was worked out to be probably the better way than what we've seen. So we learn from our clients as well. We really try to team with our clients and make an educating experience for each of us. And then Anna, if you want to just kind of mention your experience working with QuickBooks.
Yeah, I'm on the payroll and bookkeeping side, so I do a lot of things. I work with nonprofits, I work with self-employed, Schedule Cs, I work with S Corps. I kind of have my hand dabbled in all of that, and I'm really can be a good resource if you have any questions. You'll see on the front we have our number right there. Don't hesitate to give us a call, and even if Kimberly and I aren't available, we can definitely direct you to someone else and make sure that this isn't a big burden. It's not anything that's complicated. It's not rocket science. It's simple entering things and making sure that we're tracking everything. So I think you'll see that, like Kimberly said, there's multiple ways to do things, but it all comes in the same output. So if you have any questions or things that you want to target on, we're going to kind of tailor excuse me, the second half of this to really be focused on what you all want to learn and what questions you may have specifically or want to be able to pinpoint. So we'll be able to go over those things. But to begin, I think we're going to keep it kind of very simple and just show our basics and then get into more in-depth as necessary.
So just with a show of hands, who has never used QuickBooks? Okay. Not what we were really expecting, but so the
I haven't used it much.
Okay.
Right.
I've used it a lot.
But you're not like fearful of it, yeah. So our handout is really truly just a handout for those that have never used QuickBooks. So we're not going to really be going through that. That's intended to be what we have found is with the internet nowadays, it can be very intimidating to go on the internet and try to find an answer to your question, even if you have been using QuickBooks for a while. And so what this was intended to was to be a useful tool that someone could say, okay, I've never used it, but I need to write a check or I need to do a report. Give you something really simple without having to go buy a tutorial or navigate your way around on the internet. So Anna did a great job, spent a lot of hours trying to kind of put a simple tutorial together, but we're not going to be going through that, but we may just kind of refer as we kind of go through this. So we wanted this to be as more of a, stop us if you have a question or we're going too fast. but we wanted to be more kind of playing around on QuickBooks, and maybe, and then showing you things, a few different ways to do it, so maybe if you're doing it one way, you'll be like, well, I didn't know you could do it this way, maybe that'll be a little bit easier.
Right.
So we're gonna follow kind of the format the first half here and go through the basics, and try to show you a couple different ways you can go through that. So we will, so bear with us if we use more seasoned users. So we'll start with the entering of the deposits.
So I'd like to say first, before we do this, there are a few different ways to be able to maneuver in QuickBooks here. And if you go to the view, you can see that you can change where your icon bars are. I like to have this left icon bar open, but it's another way that it can be, you can customize it to your needs. It's a lot of this in here is customizable. So to make a deposit, I use this top menu bar, and we're going to go to the banking here. In this banking, you can see that you have your typical things of writing checks, making deposits, using your register. So we'll go into this make deposits, and you'll see that this screen then generates. At the top here, you want to make sure that you're using the correct account. You'll see that I only have one account here. But you know, typically you might have a couple different checking accounts, a savings account, anything like that. So just making sure that the allocation is correct, and that's where you're going to put your date and all the information. Now, when you get into here, you can see that you can enter in a lot of information, but it's not necessary to record your deposit. You can choose a receipt from, which is where they're going to have a vendor or a customer. I'll be honest, I typically do not do that when I'm making deposits for my bookkeeping clients unless it is necessary. So when you're doing this, if I'm making a deposit such as we have some revenue income, I'm going to choose that sales. You can have things such as if you're a rental property, you might have security deposit income, your monthly payments, utilities income. You just, again, tailor it completely to your needs. I tab a lot through it, it's just a lot easier. This is where you can put a payment method of check, cash, credit card to be able to better track your income of, am I having more credit card income? Am I using a lot of cash? To be able to kind of see where your trends are as a business. And then you would put in your amount. You can do multiple lines in here, but this should just be your one deposit. So say I go into the bank today and I make a deposit, and I made a deposit yesterday. I'm not going to enter this in here as one, because if you see, when I do it, my total is going to update here at the bottom, and that's my deposit total. So if you have two $50 deposits, but you see 100 when you're doing your bank reconciliation, it can make matching very difficult. And so just try to keep it simple, and everything works out very simply. So if you are unsure, you can always hit the clear and be able to start over just in case you don't know if you're entering it right. When you're complete, you can save and new or save and close. I'm just going to exit out of here and not save anything, as I don't want to enter it in to mess up our bank record.
And one thing to keep in mind, so we're keeping this really simple, but we were trying to tailor it to people that you're not doing invoicing, not doing where you have like your customer data in there, because what we find with a lot of small businesses in our area is that you have a business because you're really good at running your business, but then like this accounting stuff kind of frightens you, and you don't want to do it. So what we're showing you is things that we have a lot of clients where we like enter the information after the fact, because our end goal is to get a bank statement that's reconciled. We don't have a single business client, be a Schedule C, corporate, non-for-profit, rental activity that we don't require the bank account to be reconciled. We don't do a tax return unless we know that bank account is reconciled. So when you are, so to help your accountants and help their job, or maybe reduce your fees, we always think of having, the end goal is to get your bank account reconciled. So what Anna was just saying about when you enter your deposits, making sure that it agrees to that daily deposit and not putting it all, like putting one whole month into there, because then it's gonna be difficult to reconcile your bank statement, and when your accountant asks you, well, why is your sales up, it's gonna be difficult to say, because you have no idea all the detail behind all of that deposit.
Deposits here, you got sales up there as a classification. You do checks separately, is that like personal preference, or do you consolidate them all together versus cash deposit?
It's just a personal preference. I have a client that does. I do break out. I'm, making three deposit lines into that sales. It's all one deposit, but she likes to see that this is a check, this is a credit card, this was cash, to be able to track that in that way. So it's all just on your preference of what you want to capture.
That's a good place to record the check numbers from your customers.
Yeah, good practice is to include more detail in there, because then when your customers coming back say, well, I paid that, you have check number in there, you have something to refer back to.
Right.
So one of the things I always stress with working with business owners too, or accountants, people putting their information in there. You want to minimize your touches on any of your documentation. We live in a paper-heavy world still. So when you're entering stuff in here, put as much information in there as possible to help you in the future. And then also to the credit card thing, or the comment about that, is your credit card deposits, a lot of times it'll help to reconcile your bank statement because it's not part of that particular deposit, so then it just helps you to be able to get those charges off your bank statement. Because of this deposit, when you go to the bank statement, you can put some data in there that she'll show you if you do it as one, it's just gonna show on your bank statement as one charge. It's not gonna be broken out by those separate line items.
Just click to get this in here to reference that, but as you can see, you can put all of that information in there, under your memo, put any, whatever you want to, they purchased such and such, or it's an invoice, this is all for your internal, knowledge.
With my credit card, I know we find out that the day that we do the batch is not the day the money comes in.
Credit cards are can be very difficult to match up, and that's something that it's an easy fix, but it's something that definitely when you get to that, give us a call and we can walk you through it.
So I would do it as a separate deposit, the credit card.
Correct, because you're going to want to,
I want to see that total from the credit card.
Exactly, and since that, is coming from that credit card deposit, you're not, entering that deposit yourself into that bank. That is gonna be separate. Those credit cards will always be a separate deposit amount from your cash and check that you deposit. So if I save this, and I'm gonna save and close so that I can exit out, and we'll go into the rec to show you here. I'm just gonna fly into it because I just wanna show you how that deposit looks. So you'll see here that it's $567. When you're in here, you can actually double click on any item and it'll bring up your amount. And that's where you can see that detail, but if that's on two separate days, it can be very hard, because you'll have to go into every single deposit, try to match 50 to this, and it just causes, some room for error, when reconciling, and it can become difficult.
And it'll take longer to do your reconciliation.
And, bank recs, even if you have, $75,000 in deposits and $130,000 in, checks and debits that you've all, have taken out, they can be so simple and you can complete them in, very easily, as long as, you're doing your bookkeeping correctly. It's just matching. It's like when we were in school and, you had to match this one to the correct one and you have all these lines. They were just prepping us for bank rec.
So wait, go back to the home screen, if you would.
Mm-hmm.
So on the deposit side, here's a lot of people, and if you do a tutorial in QuickBooks, they're going to stress using this home screen versus the way that Anna did it. So another way to do it is just to record deposits right there, and it gets to the same spot.
Correct. So yeah, that it goes to show that there are multiple ways, and if you don't really need too much information, if you go into your register, You can record deposits here, you just have to tab over to your deposit line. I could write that 517. It's coming from sales, and that's another way to easily record a deposit.
All right, so then the next thing is writing checks. So a lot of times what'll happen, like I said, we're doing stuff after the fact, and what we require if they don't use QuickBooks is they have to give us their check register. So we require for their manual check register, and then we'll enter a check. So we'll go through that next. So if someone isn't keeping up on their data entry on a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis, it can be quickly kind of put in there. And that's where we will actually, we want to engage everyone as much as possible and help to reduce their fees too. And so a lot of times we'll just sit with them and say, you know, here's how to do it. Now here's your homework assignment. It's like we're back in school. Here's your homework assignment, go do it, and then we'll come back and we'll show you how to do the bank reconciliation and kind of get them engaged in the process.
Well, and just like deposits, writing checks, you can do it multiple ways, but I'm gonna go through that banking and write checks. This is helpful when you're writing a check to something and it's gonna go to multiple expense accounts, because you have your lines down here. If you're just using it in your register, you know, you have to get into the detail to get to this. So if I recommend doing it this way, especially if you need to break out. As an example, I have a client that would write a check out to Wisconsin Public Service. We'll say the total is $540. He'll split out that utilities to say $100 is gonna go to the house. And then, you know, $300 is the shop. And that last is the garage. You know, different things to where you're able to track it that way also with the check writing, just as you're able to with those deposits.
And then you can use some ideas for using that memo field. You can use that memo field for invoice number. You just kind of put comments in there. But if you put it on that field where Anna has the cursor right now, you know, that'll most likely go in the check too, but that kind of goes into some of the setup if you're printing checks. If you want to go through that next kind of
Yeah.
who prints, do you guys all print checks from QuickBooks? You do. Yeah, printing checks can be a time saver, so you don't have to do some handwritten.
Right, and if you do print, you know, you can, if you're not entering it in as a bill, again, we're doing this very just simply of writing the checks. If you're going to do that, you just have to click this print later up there, and then that's where you can go print forms. And if you go to checks, anything that's marked as print later will show up there, and you can manually choose what you would like. So again, with that memo field, this top one, just like it's the memo on your check, so anything that's written in there will print on the check and be seen to the vendor that you're giving this to. The memo field down here, this is internally for you. That's only gonna be shown on that bottom portion of it.
And I don't know if you did notice, but when you click that print later box, you can see how that number on the check changed to print. And if you unclick that, that's where the number goes in there.
Yeah.
So when people are entering stuff after the fact, yeah, we a lot of times highly suggest that they have the check number in there. It helps with ease of reconciling your bank statement, but you can also use like EFT or ACH. A lot of times we'll put EFT if it's for like a payroll payment.
Right.
So again, just the more information you can put in there, it's gonna help when you reconcile your bank statement. And if you go back to the home screen, Anna will show you where you can do write checks right from the home screen. Another, maybe our more seasoned users know that to write a check, you can also use hotkeys. Our hotkeys are listed on
Page 15.
page 15, but the hotkey that we use a lot internally, so we gotta be efficient with our time, you know, so we're trying to do it quickly versus with mouse, is Control W. So if you just do Control W, that'll get you to the same screen where Anna just was. And another hotkey that we can show you at this time, go over that Control F.
Mm-hmm. This hotkey, I actually can say that I use it the most out of any of the hotkeys. I find it incredibly efficient to find anything that you want to find in your QuickBooks. It will, anything that is entered, you can find it. If you do Control F, oh, I have to exit out of the check. So when you're at your home screen, if you do Control F, this is the find. It can go very simply, but if you go into this advanced, this is where you can choose an account, an amount. I use the amount religiously because I can go in there and say, I see something on my bank, statement for $63 and I can't find it. If you go to that Control F and say you hit it, if it's in there, it's going to be found here. So you can assure yourself that you did not already enter it and you're not going to be re-entering it and now expensing yourself again. And that can be used, for finding an invoice number. If you know the invoice number, at, specific, customer, being able to find that. It can be really tailored to, as you can see, it goes over every single item to where you can search very particularly for whatever you need to find.
This is, a lot of times, searching that amount, that's where you'll find where you might have entered the date wrong.
Yeah.
Why is it not in my bank correct? Well, you might have entered the date wrong, or just trying to find unreconciled differences, that amount, and you can see there, it doesn't have to equal that, you can do greater than, less than. Maybe someone will call you and ask about a deposit or a check, and they say, well, what how much is the amount? Rather than trying to find it, you can just use this Control F. I think we all use that in our office every single day, multiple times during the day.
Does it just put the filter choices by itself, or do you set those up?
All of this will generate by itself. So this is going to be, everything that can be shown in there, whether it's, it's on an invoice or it's on a
If you
check.
had customer names, you could put in a customer name, and you could run years of their things right there.
Well, if you're looking for a customer name, that's where I go to the customer center.
Yeah, if you're, I'm just going to quickly show you this because it's very, very simple. If you want to generate to see what a customer's activity is for all the time or specifics,
Yeah.
you go into your customer center. I put it in the other. If
You do a quick report,
Yeah.
or you can see it on that side there.
so you select your, I want to do Mary Smith. Those are run reports. Any of the data is going to show up down here. But if you run that report, I can choose the very top.
Well, see,
All.
that might look a little different than that, that's what I'm looking for, so I'm.
Yep.
gonna look at that.
Yep, so, and that's where you can specifically tailor it to be able to look at.
Because when I go to look at it, then like everybody, 300 some in each one has, this many, then I.
Right, yeah, if you wanna just see a one, for one customer, one vendor, one employee, anything like that, just go right to them. And there's gonna be that run report down here.
I will look at it, thank you.
You're welcome.
Question?
Yes.
Maybe it's a common question. How different is your customer center from your chart account?
So your chart of accounts, we were gonna touch on that, but we can go to that now. Your chart of accounts is gonna be all of your balance sheet accounts, so asset, liabilities, equity, income, and expense. So everything that's related to your financials versus, it's not gonna go into your customer detail or your vendor detail.
Right.
So we can actually jump to that, because the chart of accounts is extremely critical and very important, and you should understand your chart of accounts. So to get to your chart of accounts, did you guys follow that, how she got there?
If you go to this list at the top, and that's where you'll be able to find your chart of accounts, and along with, you can see the remaining.
Yeah, and another way is Control A, it's a hotkey. And you could probably also access it from the home screen.
And this home screen, the chart of accounts is right up here. This home screen, again, everything in here can be, really customizable to your needs and your preferences. So when you go into the chart of accounts here, you'll see, you can obviously filter it if you're looking for, I want to see what my bank fees that I've been paying all year, I can filter it to do it alphabetically to be able to find it. If you're looking for different, accounts there, but this is where it's gonna show anything that's gonna show up on your balance sheet and, profit and loss. This is gonna be all of your expense, income, liabilities, banks, assets, any of your equity. You'll see there's other income and other expense accounts. This is really vital, in my opinion, to make sure that your accounting and where you're allocating your expenses and income is staying consistent and it's clean and not, multiple things to where you have a bank service charge and just an overdraft fee or things like that, to where we can group those all together. Or if you're unsure of where you are writing a check and you go, oh shoot, I don't know what account to put that to. You head over to your chart of accounts and it's an easy snapshot of what activity you are using. If you right click on one, that's where you'll edit them, and never delete an account, because at one point it had activity, and once you delete it, it cannot be undone. That's the same, it's mentioned in there, but with the writing checks, never delete a check. If you want to do something, void it, do something like that, but when you delete it in QuickBooks, it's gone forever. You'll never get it back. So if you're not using an account and you
That's
want to
another
make
thing that's not forgiving in QuickBooks, deleting.
yes. So don't get click happy. But so I recommend.
Does it ask me twice?
I'm sorry.
Will it ask me twice? I'm sure I remember it.
So if I hit delete account, so you'll see that it's gonna, you'll see that because it has activity in it, it's going to say, hey, you can't delete this, and that's where you would wanna make it inactive, to make sure that, I don't wanna be booking anything to that, that's, no longer an account I wanna use, make it inactive and you won't be able to post to it, but it still keeps all that data, all the previous data.
With new users, I recommend that they print off their chart of accounts and have it next to their desk. And then that way, even when you're entering your checks through that check register or writing checks, if you start typing an account name, it'll automatically populate. But if it's not populating, then you probably already have an account you should be using. And that's where the setup of QuickBooks is so important. A lot of time we get people that have been using QuickBooks for 10 years or so, and their income statement is like 2 pages long. I'll tell you, your income statement, doesn't matter how big your company is, should probably only be one page, unless you're a non-for-profit, then you get the exception. But so that's kind of a rule of thumb too, and that's why most people don't use their chart of accounts. They know the basics of how to do things, but they really don't know what income and expense accounts they have. They maybe are probably just used to typing something in when they have a certain expense. But it'll make your accountant's job easier too, because we're not having to accumulate several accounts, and it creates consistency. So like if you right click on this expense account and you do a quick report, you'll be able to see, then you'll have to, this shows from the period of all of 2019, but you'll be able to see if you've correctly put all of your utility bills in there, or you're able to see the activity in that account.
So are there typical chart accounts by industry?
When you set up in QuickBooks, when you set up a new company, you can select an industry. You don't have to start from scratch with QuickBooks. You have a selected one, but that's again where then you would go print out that chart of accounts, look at it, make sure it has all the accounts you need, and you can set some of those up. And then there's a lot of different preferences you can have in QuickBooks too, or ways that people will do things. One way is maybe better than the other, but some people, when they have loans, they like to loan or checkbook account numbers, they like to put loan and then they put last 4 digits of that. And let's say you close that loan. Well, like here Anna was showing you, that was one time you might use that inactive button, because you don't want it to clog up your chart of accounts. Once you paid off that loan or you close that checkbook, then you don't need that account anymore, so then you might make that as inactive. So again, it's the more detail you put into QuickBooks, the more it's gonna help you. It's more it's for like bank accounts, loan accounts. If you use separate accounts for those particular loans, it's not gonna bog down all of your detail and all of your history. Some people will just use one loan account for all their loans, but then it gets really hard to reconcile at the end of the year.
One thing I'd like to touch base with that is when you are setting up a new account, I'll just go ahead and create a new one here. You can see that when you go into it to create it, say you do have 4 loans and you want to be able to have them all in one spot. You know, I can easily, I can easily, you know, just make an account that says loan. And then I'm gonna go in, and that's where then you can, apologize, there we go. That's where I can make, okay, this is a River Valley State Bank ending in 3077. Well, I want that to be all lumped under loans. That's where you can make sub-accounts. You'll see that yeah, but because I have it, the loan is, I set it up as a long-term liability.
You can,
Um,
use a can.
I'm going to do this. Now you'll be able to see it.
Probably clicking a little too fast.
I want to get you back into where I was trying to show you. So I set up my initial loan. I'm going to go in there and create my, that's what it, sorry. So this is where I would do, this is my River Valley State Bank loan of last 4 digits. And now I can choose that loan account. And you'll see in this chart account now, it's right underneath there. Anything that I'm gonna put under, it's gonna populate down there, and it's an easy way to see them all in one lump sum and be able to, you know, track it and see it as a capture. So that's something that, you know, you can have your chart accounts, but you can have, you know, the sub-accounts under there when necessary.
Well, here's probably a good point to show you the reports and how it looks then when you get to a balance sheet.
Right, so now you'll see that I've created that sub-account under that loan. So in the reports here, when you go to the reports to get to your, you know, your income statement or your P&L, you're gonna go to this company and financial. That's the biggest one that, you know, we're constantly going through to see that P&L and that balance sheet. So if I go to this balance sheet, well, I have no activity in there. Yeah. So where you would see it, I apologize that since I just created it, I have no activity. It's not gonna show anything up here that's zeros. So any account that is, you know, any liability, anything like that that has no information in it, it's not gonna populate on there until you use that account. That's when it'll kick it into that report. So that's why you see my checking here, because I have my deposits, my expenses in here. So therefore, really, I only have checking activity. If you have your loan payments, this is where you would see it all under this liabilities and equity. That's where you're gonna see your, you know, any of your loans, your credit cards, stuff such as that.
How many of you use reports? You're using QuickBooks, right? No. Yeah, well, reports are, if you aren't using them, they're very important because they give you a snapshot. So, you know, if you would do the profit and loss.
So again, I'm gonna go to those reports, company and financial, and choose this profit and loss standard.
And then up at the top, you can really customize it, you know, based on your dates and things. But this is why you use QuickBooks, so that you can see where your income and expenses, where you're kind of tracking throughout the year. And then if you click on Customize Report, you can compare it to like a previous period. And then that allows you to see what accounts are, you know, up or down. So reports are very important. If you aren't using them, you should.
And this is where you can, right here is where you can choose if you want to do it to a previous year, a previous period. So you could choose a quarter of, I want to look at my third quarter versus my second quarter. Let's see what those differences are. Or, you know, or my income, what's, you know, are there discrepancies there? it's very helpful to be able to really see how your business is doing in a very quick snapshot.
So since we've talked about the bank reconciliation a lot, I wanna make sure we touch on that. We have about 20 minutes left, and I said we were gonna have last half the time of Q&A. So the reconciling bank statement is on page 6, where we go through a lot more detail, but we'll show you just, and we'll kind of walk through just the key points of reconciling your bank statement.
So you'll go into the banking menu and choose that reconcile. This window is gonna initially generate, this is where you're going to choose your account. You can reconcile your banks, your loans, your credit cards, you know, you can really reconcile a lot of things, and I recommend reconciling any account you can. So I'm gonna choose the checking here. This is where our statement date is, so this is my last month's statement, and we're now into September, so I'm gonna go ahead and reconcile all of my August activity. So this beginning balance, this is gonna be the beginning balance of your account at the bank rec. So if you're doing it on a monthly basis, that beginning balance is the ending balance of your prior rec. So it's the first of the month, that's what's in your account. Your ending balance is obviously your ending balance that you're on your statement. Here you can easily put any service charges. On this account, on this statement, you'll see that I earned 8 cents of interest. Instead of making an actual interest deposit or anything like that, just go ahead and do it on your bank rec, and QuickBooks will automatically make the necessary entry for you. This automatically populates when you have your interest income and the dates, so if those need to be changed, make sure that you do so. So then I'm gonna go ahead and hit continue to actually get into this bank reconcile window. I highly recommend the first thing you do once you get into here is hide all those transactions after the statement end date, because they're not necessary. They're just gonna clog it up and make it more difficult to find items. So I'm gonna go ahead and hide all those items after that 8/31. So you'll see all of my September entries are now, you know, they are not viewable. This is where I would go in and check off all of my checks that went. Click in my deposits. You'll see here, this is a void. This is a deposit that I had voided because we don't want to delete it. Whenever you see a 0, go ahead and click it. It's not gonna mess with your bank rec. It's just gonna make it more easy to be able to see everything, because it'll clear it. Otherwise, those zeros, anything that you don't mark off, they're gonna generate every single time. So if you, you'll see it with, I'm not sure if any of you would do payroll, but with direct deposit payrolls, you'll see zeros on that actual deposit side because of how that direct deposit gets entered into the system. Now, not everything, obviously, as we know, will clear. I wrote Ace Hardware check at the end of the month. They didn't deposit it until the 4th of September, so it's not on the statement, even though it's an August thing. Some people, for instance, I have restaurants. You have servers that get a very, very small paycheck for $3. They're not cashing them. You'll sit there and it'll show up all year long. Then we take care of it at the end of the year and get it out of there. But don't be alarmed if something is not cleared in there. Unless you see it on the bank statement, don't click it. The major thing here is to make sure, right here, you do not reconcile until that difference is 0. This is where, say my difference is $142.67, and I have 300 items of checks that I have seen. Well, I don't want to take the time to try to do it. This is where I would do Control F. It's going to bring it up. I can find that exact, I should see what that is. So I can't find the 142.67. What is this? Oh, it's in here, and it's on 8/29. And that's where I would go back into the reconcile and be able to find it by the date. That's where I use that Control F a lot. If you have a lot of activity in there, it can be kind of cumbersome to be searching line item by line item. So when you have marked everything and your difference is 0, that's when you can reconcile it. I'm gonna go ahead and do so, and it'll prompt you to print. I recommend printing. I'm not going to, obviously.
Can you go back and do a display? when you're checking stuff off, make sure you're paying attention to detail, paying the dates, amounts. Because then that's where, especially with amounts, you might be very careful to transpose numbers but dates are important. And we'll show you that, because I want to show you how when it reconciles, when you have uncleared items, you got to make sure the number on you can't just reconcile and be done and print it and put in the file. You need to look at it and make sure that balance on the reconciliation equals what your balance sheet says.
What do you want me to do? If you don't print, what I'm doing is if you go into that reports and into that banking, you can view all of your previous reconciliations. You can see that I only have 2 months reconciled here. So I'm gonna go into the detail here and display it. Maybe, there we go. And so this is, essentially it's gonna, the top is gonna show you everything that you've marked off. Anything down here, this is where you see this uncleared transaction. So that's, anything that's in that uncleared, those are outstanding. And any of the new, those are transactions after the statement end date.
But then you should make sure, it might be hard to see, but you should make sure that where it says register balance as of 8/31/406, you should make sure that it actually agrees to your cash balance at 8/31.
Yeah, so here's our 8/31/406/69. If I go into the balance sheet and do it as of 8/31, it ties together with that. There's that 406/69. If that doesn't match, there are a few different things, when you're reconciling, you go into some glitches and to where you can't find those differences. And there are times where there will be differences and you just can't find it or you don't know how to fix it. I urge you to call us. We don't want to be clicking things that aren't clicked, because that's where now it's messing up our reports and we're not accurately tracking all of this, and we're saying that something has posted or not posted when it hasn't.
So you're talking, for example, that, say I'm going to do new reconciliation, bank reconciliation, and oh, by the way, now the last month's number, it doesn't match the new statement number. We usually I panic at that point. But typically I probably do need a double check.
Yeah, that's where we have protocol that we deal with this on a daily basis, that we can play around in your QuickBooks and find out what may have happened. And on that note, we're going to show you something that's very important to do. We've been stressing, detail and dates and amounts are all correct. One of the things that you can do to help yourself is locking your periods.
So for instance, in the case that you just spoke, that you reconciled your bank statement, and the following month now you've messed with something in that previous month that has been reconciled. If you reconcile, say I just reconciled at 8/31, I know everything is good. I'm gonna go ahead and lock that period to ensure that I can't mess with it. And if I do need to mess with it, I better be sure, because it's gonna prompt me that I need to, make sure that I wanna make these changes.
We are doing this, like I do financial statement audits for town and not-for-profits, and every single one of my clients, I tell them to lock the year. So we may not be best practice to do every month, but for sure at the minimum do a year, because that information was already on a tax return. And so, it's very easy, because the calendar days go by so fast, it's very easy to write the wrong year in, and you're not gonna know that. You're gonna have no idea, but when you go, what we just showed you, your cash isn't gonna match, and most likely it's not gonna match because you entered a date wrong.
So to get into this period locking, I'm going to go into this edit, and it's actually in your preferences.
It's on page 13.
So once you're in there, the accounting one is at the top, and that's where we get into that. But you have to actually click on this company preferences tab. And here at the bottom, you can see this closing date, and you know, I don't have one set right now. And again, you don't have to do it monthly, but just because as we've been going, you can see that I know everything is good as of that 8/31, but typically it's at a year end when you're doing this. So I'm going to go ahead and enter in that August date. If you're going to set passwords, which I do highly recommend, just so that you don't, you know, we're human, we make mistakes, and to try to make it so that, you know, we're catching ourselves. Be very consistent with this password, because it will ask you every single time, you know, if you're trying to enter things in there, and if you forget it, that can run into a problem. What I use for my closing password is like as we said, we normally do a year. So I would use the year 2019. If I'm closing the year 2019, I use 2019 and my initials. So that way I know that if I want to enter it into something into 18 that is, you know, needs to be edited or changed, that is going to be 2018 AH. Anything for, that's how I personally, so it's up to however you do. That's just what I found is an easy way for me to remember it. If I'm doing, so if I were to do a month one, so if I was going to be doing this August, if I were doing it monthly, I would choose 08 AH is what I would do. But I recommend being consistent with that, so that way you know what your passwords are for each period that is locked.
So if you're closing 8/31/19, 2018 is still open, would you or
Everything
is
up
it
until,
locked?
correct, yep, everything up until that date. So, you know, typically I would be coming in here and I would be closing out the year 2018, so I would actually be closing it as of 2018. So that way, everything in 2019 is open.
Yeah, and that's important when you're like a town, not-for-profit, where you're presenting to a board, because if you're giving them financial statements and you're giving them those financial statements, and even though the year may not be closed, you might change something in a previous period. What if that board member comes back to you and asks you about something on that financial statement that was presented at an earlier meeting? It's gonna be very difficult. So that's where it's really helpful, and that's why, like I said, when I work with my towns and not-for-profits, pretty much every single one of them knows to lock their periods.
I don't think you ever mentioned that to Bruce. He's gonna learn something at community church.
Yeah, he knows.
I don't remember him ever.
We went through a lot.
All right, so we only have about 5 minutes left, so I really want to get some questions that you specifically all have, if you have any, so that way we can tailor to any issues that you're having and be able to hopefully direct you and give you an answer, and if not,
Repeat the question before you answer it.
okay.
When I was in college, they talked about double entry accounting.
Starting route to Presque Isle.
Oh.
Head north on Park Street.
Can you explain how that impacts on the QuickBooks? Is that a consideration in your double entry accounting?
QuickBooks requires double entry accounting.
Yeah, QuickBooks is double entry accounting, so when you're entering that check, it is, we see it as just, we're entering an expense. But when we actually enter it, it is doing that double entry. It is, the one side is hitting your checking account, and then that other side is hitting that expense account. So it is touching your balance sheet and your P&L. So all of this in here is
I
double-sided.
don't have to worry about that.
Exactly, there you go, ease of mind.
And well, that's where some of the other like Quicken or QuickBooks for self-employed is not double-sided accounting. If you know anybody that's using an accounting software where they can't reconcile a bank statement, most likely it's not double-sided accounting. And that's why we won't rely on those Quicken reports. We use QuickBooks for everybody. If a client brings us Quicken and we have to produce a balance sheet, which we do with all of our businesses, we put it into QuickBooks. We can just quickly enter the data. I want to have more questions, but just a couple other important things that I think are important. Another hotkey that's really helpful is Control P for print. And then something that every time I mention this, people are like, oh, I didn't know you could do that. But QuickBooks is very easy to navigate around in. So it's always helpful to have multiple windows. So Anna can show you how that looks.
So in the view, I have the multiple windows here open, so you can see that I can minimize this, be able to, this is helpful where if I wanna look at, here I'll give you an example of where it can be very nice. I wanna look at my balance sheet and my P&L at the same time. You can easily move this to the side, be able to bring, be able to see your balance sheet and your P&L. Obviously you can sit there and edit it to where you can see everything at once. But if you have, I'll show you, if you don't have that clicked, and it's the one window, I'm only able to look at one thing at one time. So recommend having that multiple windows just so you can view multiple things such as this.
And this is a feature that you do not have with QuickBooks Online. QuickBooks Online, you are not able to view multiple windows like that. If you wanna see multiple windows, you have to have 2 browsers open and probably multiple screens. And then another thing, if
so with those multiple windows, it's my preference, and again, it's all user preference, but under this view, I like this left icon bar, and the reason why I like this left icon bar is because I can see this open windows. I can easily toggle between anything, that I have open, so that way, if I'm looking at my balance sheet, but I wanna see what my customer, and I'm having to toggle to look at different things, but I don't want it all up at once, it's very nice. If you have that top icon bar up here, you don't have that open windows option.
and the default is the home screen, like it doesn't default to that, you have to pick that option in QuickBooks.
You'll have to go to that view and change to that left icon bar. This is where you could also, I just want to touch base on it real quick. This is where under my shortcuts, you can change this all to whatever you want. Just to get it onto your shortcut, if you're in something, I want my balance sheet, if you go to view, add balance sheet to icon bar, and that's going to show up there. Now if I scroll up, make sure to the bottom, yep. Now I can, reports that you run a lot of, or things that you want to be able to just one click and get there and get that exact thing, that's going to be a very simple way for you is under that My Shortcuts option.
Do you guys know if you do online QuickBooks, if you have 2 monitors, can you split to different?
You cannot,
No.
yeah.
You have 2 browsers open.
You have to have, that's what I found is the 2 browsers, and you have to be in your QuickBooks Online at the same time, just in 2 different.
That's where our younger users figured that out. Also with this open windows, if you, a couple of things, a lot of people probably know this already that use QuickBooks, but you can get into your detail really quick in QuickBooks just by double clicking. See how Anna just double clicked on the checking balance, gave her all the detail. Well, people get really used to this, and then they end up having a lot of open windows on the left-hand side. So you can clean all that up by going to Window, Window, Close All. You see how she does that, and then that automatically empties it out. So I always recommend to people, you can be busy working on things, and there can be a lot of, close them all out before you get out of QuickBooks, because otherwise when you go back into it, those will all be open again.
Yeah.
Just keep it clean.
I'm sure you all know that, but anything that you have open on your window when you close that company, it's going to be there when you open the company, and that if you have a lot open, it can kind of slow up that process of getting into your account.
Any other questions?
Any questions now?
Okay, so kind of falling behind, I'm using pay bills already. I've got a long list of pay bills windows that need to clean out. A lot of them expired, I wouldn't pay them, because I've been using bills and then write checks.
That's going to require a QuickBooks technician, an office visit.
So you have bills in there that you've already paid. Void the bill. Void it.
That should be
If you've already paid it and you just need it to go away so that it doesn't show that you have an accounts payable, you have something, an outstanding bill, just go ahead and void it, and it'll make those zeros and clean it up so that way you don't have to try to enter it as paid.
I see.
Yep, there you go.
One more accounting.
I tax on accounting.
End of fiscal year, we used it into the monthly reconciliation, or the date the check was written, the date the check was cleared, what?
When you're putting in your checks,
Yeah. I'm gonna cut off the end of fiscal year. The date of the check, when I'm reconciling, or the date cleared the bank?
well, when is the end of your fiscal year? Is it 12/31?
Let's say it is, okay?
Okay, and you're wondering what to date,
If I said open checks on 12/31,
right?
do I include them in the current year, or?
So, well, that's gonna be you don't really, you just need to worry about that because it's not messing anything up with your bank rec or whatnot. That's really just something that's on the tax side, to where when we're creating your, return, that's where we're gonna take into those uncleared, transactions if it does need to be taken. But it's gonna be that check, if it was written in 2018, that expense is taken in 2018 because that's when it's showing up on your P&L.
Okay.
So it's whatever it's dated for is where it's gonna show up.
That answers the question.
Yeah.
And, well, that gets to a tax question, which is whether your cash or accrual, if it's included in that fiscal year or not.
Oh, yeah,
But-
I guess I just assumed that you would've.
We highly advise everybody in QuickBooks you can have the option of doing cash reports or accrual reports. We highly advise people to always keep it as accrual and just kind of think in that mindset and enter your information on the same exact date. Don't try to outsmart your accountant or your tax preparer by using a different date. Just use the date that it actually happened.
For those that don't know how to change from cash to accrual, when you're in the report and you go to that customized report, you'll see it right here, this report basis. That's where you'll toggle between that cash and accrual, and just, we recommend that you do that accrual.
You may have already answered this question. Is this program protected somehow from others getting into it?
So, if you go into your QuickBooks and if you go into your,
It's on your desktop, so it's protected from anybody getting into it because it's not out on the web or out on the internet. So
Unless you're using the online system.
if you're using the online system,
Leave
that's,
the online system off to the side.
Yeah.
So if it's on your desktop, you need a password to get into your own.
well, you'll have to, so that's where you set it up. So if you say you don't have a password and, you can have different users. You can have multiple users, each user can have their own password. To set any of that up, you're going to go into your company and you see set up users and passwords. And so this is where, I don't have this wasn't password protected just because it has no data. But that's where I would go in and I can set any password that I want, and you can toggle that to where, I'm the owner of the company and I have the admin, thing, and I can do whatever I want here, and I'm password protected, and this is only mine. Now, Kimberly is she's my accountant, or not accountant because I'm gonna give you all the rights to it. She's my bookkeeper in-house, so I don't really need her to do very much. I'm gonna set her up as a new user and take away some of those capabilities. And now she's gonna have her own login with her own capabilities that are slimmed back some, and her own password. So it can be very protected for how you need it to be.
that's for some companies, because payroll is very sensitive. We kind of went beyond your question of if it can be maybe hacked into or whatever,
Well,
but
that was the other half of it, was
Yeah, but-
can someone else come in from the outside into?
yeah, notes it's on your desktop, but then if you have other people in your company, a lot of times people will use this user option because payroll is very sensitive and they only want the payroll clerk seeing that information so they can protect that, so only them them as the owner, as the admin, have the ability to see payroll, and then that payroll clerk gets to see payroll. That's also a good question, because what we should have on here, which is very important, and you should write it in bold, all caps, back up your data is super, super important. You spend so much time entering all that data, you don't want to lose it. And you could, even though it's on your desktop, it's not on the internet, you could lose it. Your computer could crash. And so, if you want to just show them how to, so usually what I recommend to people is you have 2 or 3 backups, and you're kind of rotating. You probably heard stories of people that have it on a flash stick, and the flash stick goes bad, and lose other data, or it gets crushed somehow. So have 2 or 3 devices that you're rotating between, and then do it often, whatever you feel comfortable with, but make sure that you're backing up your data.
Yeah, I recommend that right after you do your bank rec, go ahead and back up. You've reconciled everything in there, back it up on a monthly basis, and you know that it's, no matter what, any backup that you have is going to be correct. That there's no discrepancies in that.
And don't back up to your desktop, back up to
Yeah.
and know where you're backing up to.
Yeah, so when you actually go and, say I were gonna go and do it and I click it, then it's gonna ask me where to put it. But make sure that when you are backing up your, data, that you're putting it, to that. That you're making sure that it's on your flash stick, because sometimes, we'll get empty flash sticks from clients because they just, well, I hit back up. Oh, but you didn't choose where to back it up to, and now you just backed it up to your desktop, and now you just have 2 QuickBooks on your desktop. Is there any other questions or anything that we didn't go over or touch base, or anything that didn't make sense or confusing that you'd like us to kind of, elaborate or go into more detail on?
I'm curious about hooking up to your bank.
Mm-hmm.
Again, is that secure to follow up Dennis's question when you have your bank, whether you're doing the online version or the desktop version?
I don't do any of, no one that, I have in the past, had the bank account linked to it, that was years ago. It doesn't.
That's not something you recommend?
What I've heard, and again, I'm not in QuickBooks every day like Anna and our other team members are, but what I've heard from our more experienced individuals is when you're backing up to, when you're downloading from the banking system, it'll create new accounts, it creates more of a mess. So
And
we don't recommend people download from their bank account.
Right, and it doesn't know what you've entered, so it can create duplicates then.
I know somewhere locally that uses ADP for their payroll,
Mm-hmm.
and supposedly the bookkeepers told me that it downloads the journal entry right into QuickBooks. That scares me. But is that true? Do they do that?
I'm not familiar with ADP, but I do know that there are those capabilities to be able to have something generate those journal entries. Yeah, it can be an ease of access and cut some time to have things automatically do that. I don't always recommend it just because you know what it's supposed to be. It's your business. You know the numbers. You know what expense and income or what it needs to be booked to. The bank doesn't. There can be errors, and like Kimberly said, it can book it to wrong expense accounts, and that's where, like I was saying, when you have multiple accounts that are the same thing, it can be very, very hard to see accurate information of what is going on in your business.
Yeah, I can't speak from personal experience, but I know we've had people that have had clients that have used ADP, and they've relied on those numbers, and then when it comes on our end, we are unable to reconcile to we use the reports and we reconcile to your 940, 941s, W-T7, payroll summary, and we can't, and we have to adjust. Same thing with Intuit Payroll. We just have a couple clients that have QuickBooks Online and thought, oh, Intuit Payroll will automatically do everything for me. Well, that's great, but you gotta understand your data enough to know if it's right or wrong. You can't just say, okay, they're automating the process, so I don't have to worry about it, especially with payroll, because payroll is so important. And we stress in our office document matching, so from a tax return perspective, we're always document matching as much as we can to other documents the IRS may be getting. So like payroll is very important because the IRS can document match to a W-3 to, everything. So, again, it's just making sure you're knowing your data. And it's a great tool, but you gotta, bad data in, bad data out. You gotta make sure you're very familiar with it.
So yeah, if if anyone, if you, I don't know who does actually make journal entries, manually journal entries, I recommend that if you're able to make them yourself, do it. If you have a question, are unsure if you're debiting or crediting the right thing, or, oh shoot, what's the other half of this? Because, as we stated, QuickBooks is the double-sided, what's the other side of this, or what's my plug? Call us. Well, we want you to be, knowledgeable about how to manage your own books, and we just want to guide you. We'll guide you in the correct direction when needed. Use us as the resource if you have any questions, because it's a lot easier to do it correctly right away than to find it at the end and try to remember what you were doing. I've been there. It's very hard sometimes to remember what you did 3.5 months ago. So just use us whenever needed. We're there to help. Any other questions?
This may be we just had a bank change here. So, is there anything I need to know about changing banks or the reconciliation?
I can tell you that Huntington sent me a cutoff date. What I did is I reconciled both you and bookkeeping, and then I fixed out what I did.
Nothing else I need to know about that. Okay.
Yep, and that's what I did with my clients of that. If you're familiar with transfers, because again, I would recommend with that Huntington change, not just renaming your bank account on your chart of accounts, keep that old account, because it's a separate account. Even though they, so to say, merged, your account numbers changed, all of that. Go ahead and create a new bank account on your chart of accounts. And if you go into banking here and you do a transfer funds, as of, I'll give you some time. So say that, I think it was right in June time. Yeah, that's what I thought it was. As of June 15th, now I'm gonna move all of my, old checking. You can actually create the account right here, and I'm gonna move it into Huntington. See, if you don't have it, you can create any account right where you're typing it, instead of having to go to that chart of accounts to create it. So I'm just gonna go ahead and set that up as my bank. Save that. Now it's on my chart of accounts. I didn't have to change where I was going. I'm still going through with what I wanted. And my account balance at that time was $343.35. I want that all to go into Huntington. And then when I go and look, at my chart of accounts here, you'll see the two banks. And now you can see how all that balance got transferred right over to Huntington, and that is the easiest way to go about doing that. That transfer, just to kind of
So, in that,
blanket that, it could be used with that, credit cards, loans. You can transfer from one account to the other. You make a credit card payment from your bank. If you'd like to, instead of putting that into a right check, you can transfer that payment from your bank to your credit card for savings, or you're moving money from one to the other. That transfer is going to be your best friend. It's the easiest way to go about doing that.
and you said that would pay credit card bills from your bank?
You can use, I'm not sure how you do all of your bookkeeping, so I'm not gonna say you should, but it is something that you could do. I was actually doing it earlier today with client, they have so many credit cards that it's just easier for me to do a transfer than to be writing, you know, and making sure that I'm booking it to that correct balance sheet. Well, if I'm, you know, just transferring one to the next, I can hit save and new and do all those, you know, payments, but I'm gonna record them as transfers. So it can be used in multiple ways.
For like several hours, but I think I want to get it wrapped up.
So,
Like Ann said at the beginning, our number is down at the bottom of the presentation, and we're located just in Minocqua, so thanks for all your questions.
Do people ever, like, does Nicolay or anyone offer full classes with anybody, like semester classes?
for QuickBooks, yeah, Nicolay does. Yeah, that's actually how I began learning how to do QuickBooks. Is you know, when I first started working in the system, you know, I was able to kind of teach myself, but I wanted to know those little ins and outs, and Nicolay has a QuickBooks class that you can take. I think there is, when I did it, there wasn't an online yet. I had to go to the facility, but yeah, that's something that, you know, they also have, you know, a very simple, you know, like bookkeeping class too. So if you're looking for more of that education of it, I highly recommend looking at that Nicolay, and they do offer a lot of different things.
I did leave everyone a reminder of the next episodes of the Lunch and Learn, the social strategy. That's a 3-hour workshop on October 2nd, so social media. There's still spots. We're holding it to only 10 people, so that Pam has a lot of ability to work with each person. So sign up for that, call the chamber. And then the other ones that are listed here, the ones that say build your Boulder business will be archived. This one and the next two will be archived on the public library archive, our YouTube channel. So anyone who wants to look at it, or if you have employees or other people or want to review what was said, take a look at that. So, hope we see you next month, October 23rd, making most of the social media.